Good morning, beautiful people. Glad you could join us today. My name is Samson Williams. I'm a crowdfunding expert, aficionado, enthusiast. We're also a co-investor into Bright.us, investment crowdfunding done right. And so this morning, the reason that you're tuning in and listening to us is because we have Akshata from KARM Legal in the UAE and Dubai. She's going to tell us a little bit about crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding in Dubai. And joining us is Maureen Murat from Crowdie Advisors, who's going to give us a little juxtaposition of crowdfunding rules, of Jobs Act crowdfunding rules here in America. So Akshata, introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you, Samson. Thank you for having me today. Hi, everyone. This is Akshata Namjoshi. I lead the fintech practice for our firm, KARM Legal, which is a UAE-based law firm. The firm and we specialize in advising clients on fintech, blockchain-based projects, crowdfunding-based projects, and pretty much everything that's in emerging tech. And yes, thank you. Very excited to be here today.
Awesome. Awesome. And so for all of our American listeners, UAE stands for United Arab Emirates. You might often think of Dubai as they're synonymous, but we'll talk about the geography over there a little bit later. And so for our American perspective, we want to introduce Maureen Murat from Crowdie Advisors. Maureen?
Hi, everyone. Maureen Murat here from Crowdie Advisors. The Crowdie Advisors consulting firm, we work on crowdfunding projects as well for people startups and entrepreneurs who are looking to raise capital for their business via equity crowdfunding or debt crowdfunding. We help with strategy, preparing your compliance documents and things of that nature. We also help people who are maybe not ready for crowdfunding, but might need a little boost in terms of getting their documents in order to be able to operate as a bona fide business.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm also going to ask Maureen to give us some kind of disclaimer because she's so good at those.
Okay, I should have started off with that first. So the disclaimer is that all the information that we're sharing for you today is to be used for informational purposes only. We are attorneys, but we are not your attorneys. So if you need legal assistance, financial assistance, then we do ask you to do your research and speak to someone or call one of us. But nonetheless, this information we're providing today is for informational purposes only.
Excellent. As a point of clarity, I am only an attorney on Twitter. So if you would like some really bad legal advice, you can follow me at Hustle Fund Baby on Twitter. But now we want to jump into it. We're going to give you a very high level overview from the difference of crowdfunding in Dubai / the UAE in their sandbox rules, where you can raise up to $200,000 versus here in America underneath the Jobs Act Reg CF most recent updates that are going into effect here in 2021, where you'll be able to raise up to $5 million using Reg CF. Right now you can raise $1 million. But first, let's go over to Akshata so she can give us some sense of what is investment equity crowdfunding like in Dubai / the UAE.
Right. Sure. So for those who are sort of a little uninitiated about how legal system in UAE and like Samson said, the United Arab Emirates works. UAE is actually split into different free zones and mainland, which means that there are different financial regulators which sort of have the jurisdiction to oversee and come out with rules for crowdfunding, tokenization, crypto assets, and many other emerging, let's say, areas of technology. Two of such regulators is Abu Dhabi Global Market and DIFC, Dubai International Financial Center. And in addition to that, we have a third federal regulator, which is the Securities and Commodities Authority. Now, all the three of them have different versions of regulating how fundraising will operate in UAE. If one was to look at DIFC, that is very closer to the concept of either UK FCA or US Reg CF in that regard, where there is a provision for equity-based crowdfunding, there's provision for loan, debt, and property crowdfunding as well. Now, on the other hand, if one was to look at ADGM, they have provision for private financing platforms, which is more focused on professional investors. And then thirdly, we have ESCAM, which has recently come out with regulations for just fundraising platforms. So there's a broader concept of fundraising platforms, which could include everything right up from equity, commodities, and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, and because it's more sort of relevant to the conversation here, the closest nexus that one can draw is with DIFC. DIFC has the kind of very similar provision to equity crowdfunding, and that would typically mean that the campaigns which are listed on the crowdfunding platform are able to issue shares and stocks for in return for let's say raising money from the investors the way they sort of the way they wish and in accordance with the legislations. Yeah, so over to you again.
Oh no, it's excellent. And again, if you're thinking about going into Dubai, MENA, the Middle East, North Africa area to set up your investment or equity crowdfunding campaign, you want to reach out to Akshata and KARM Legal, because when they're talking about the 3 different regulators, DIFC, ADM, ESCOM, you need to know the little nuances for raising money there legally in a regulatory and compliant manner. So I have a question for you, Akshata. What is the maximum amount of money people can raise in Dubai using the equity crowdfunding rules from DIFC?
So from DIFC, well, as far as retail clients are concerned and retail investors are sort of crowdfunding platforms are permitted to raise funds from retail investors. Each individual retail investor cannot invest more than $50,000 a year. That's the investment limit. In total, the cap remains at 5 million when it comes to the actual crowdfunding platform. There's also some, let's say, leeway to engage with professional investors. They're called professional clients when it comes to DIFC. But of course, there are a lot of options when it comes to, mix and match of retail investors, professional clients, and the crowdfunding platform itself. So,
excellent.
Right. So the sandbox model that we were talking about was more actually based on the mix of crypto assets and crowdfunding, which we'll actually talk about as the conversation progresses. But standalone, if one was to look at pure equity-based crowdfunding, then it's 50,000 and 5 million.
50,000 and 5 million. Excellent. I'm gonna write that down. I know we had a conversation offline about cryptocurrencies, crypto crowdfunding, raising money for crypto/blockchain based projects. So we're gonna put a pin in that just for one moment as we come over to Maureen, because retail investors in America cannot invest $50,000 a year or $5 million over the course of the campaign. So Maureen, I'm gonna let you provide the audience. Here in America, Maureen is based in Washington, D.C., but crowdfunding rules are national. Well, there's the Jobs Act Reg CF crowdfunding rules span across the entire United States. There are state-specific rules, but I'll let Maureen, who's an actual lawyer, fill you in on some of those details. Maureen?
Sure. So the U.S. rules are promulgated crowdfunding campaigns are regulated by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. The other agency that is, that has a stake in these crowdfunding platforms is FINRA, the Financial Regulatory Authority, because a funding portal has to be registered with the SEC and approved and be a member of FINRA to be able to operate. And the issuer or the company that wants to raise money also has to register with the SEC and provide that documentation to the platform. They have to fill out a form called Form C. So the limit is a lot less than what Dubai has right now. We're at 1,070,000. In 2016, it was 1 million, but I think, was it a year and a half later, they thought to add 7%. And so now it's 1,070,000, and it's been like that for the last few years. And as Samson said, the SEC voted a couple months ago, and so the limits are going to change for Reg CF, and it will be $5 million sometime this year. So the way that works is once they rule on it and they voted on it, then they have to add it to what's called the Federal Register, which has all the different laws, the new laws that come into play. And it doesn't become effective until 60 days after it's been on the Federal Register. So even though they voted on it, I think in early November, it may not go into effect until February or March. So that's one. The other thing is, in terms of investors, what they can give or what they can invest in a business is 5% of their income, or a little over $2,500 per year, if they're considered a retail or non-accredited investor. And I try not to use retail investor generally, because there are retail investors who are not professional investors, but still have income, at least from the US perspective. Like, you could potentially invest more, but you're not necessarily considered a retail investor because you still might make more than $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year. The other thing with the investors is, if you're an accredited investor, the accredited investor can't give more than $107,000 in a campaign. But then they have other considerations too, right? Because if you're an accredited investor, you have free reign in a way to invest in all types of different campaigns. This is just specifically for Reg CF. There's a limitation, but if they wanted to go under Reg A Plus, where you can raise a lot more money, or other regulations where you can raise, millions and millions of dollars, then they don't have that restriction.
Excellent, excellent. And also just a note that in the new year, with the new Reg CF rules and updates, rather, the Securities and Exchange Commission updated the 1933 Securities and Exchange Act. And so apparently accredited investors, once the rules do take effect, will be able to invest as much as they want in Reg CF deals. So they won't have a limit coming into this new year as soon as those get into effect. They made some other things that made using this thing called the internet easier to advertise and market your offering. Apparently the internet didn't exist in 1933. So,
but I'll add something else about accredited investors that the SEC also changed. They added new ways for a person to become accredited. Initially, it was just about how much money you made, but now you can become accredited if you have series licenses or securities licenses. So education, and also working on a fund, or like a VC fund, and having experience, that might consider you to be an accredited investor as well.
Okay, excellent. So we're here with Akshata from KARM Legal out of Dubai, and Maureen Murat from Crowdie Advisors. My name is Samson Williams. I'm representing Bright.us today, investment crowdfunding done Bright. And I'm going to ask both of you ladies for a quick scenario, or you can tag team me on this one. So I'm a startup. I'm based in Florida. I want to come to Dubai to raise money. I'm incorporated in Delaware, like every other country, every other startup in the world. And I come to you and I say, okay, I heard about investment crowdfunding. I've got 3 questions. How much does it cost to crowdfund? Can I crowdfund from people in Dubai and America? What is the process to getting started? Go.
Okay. Should I go first?
Yes,
Sure.
sure.
Sure. So the first things first, the fundamental idea, or for anyone to set up a company in UAE, is to be able to obtain a license from the regulator. And pretty much all the free zones operate on licensing model in UAE. Right. So the first idea is to start the step by obtaining a license for, crowdfunding platform. Typically, the application would range between, just the application would be $25,000 to $40,000, with a lot of other aspects when it comes to application fees, office spaces, specific other forms which need to be filled out, name approvals, and so on and so forth. Because crowdfunding platforms fall under category 4, and there are different categories that DFC has in UAE, it would be roughly $140,000 for the base capital. So again, that's something that one needs to be prepared for. And of course, other than that, depending on what is the kind of crowdfunding you're going for, there will be a lot of requirements when it comes to disclosures, when it comes to KYCing and doing an assessment on the campaigns that one is going to list on the crowdfunding platforms. There are a lot of regulations and a lot of let's say compliance requirements that are going to go towards in that direction. So it's from one perspective, it's very straightforward to understand, but from the other perspective, there are a lot of dynamics that go into play, especially because it's a free zone and mainland model. So one may be permitted to offer it to UAE residents, but as a free zone, you cannot operate in UAE, and then the dynamics change. So one needs to be very careful about how one is placed in a free zone, and then operating from a free zone, offering it to the public, onboarding campaigns from perhaps countries all over the place. So there's a lot of technicalities which sort of go in that direction.
I love it. I love it because I misstated the question because you gave me the perspective of a crowdfunding platform, which I think is great. Because if you're interested in operating a crowdfunding platform in Dubai, you need about a minimum of $250,000. Call Akshata, she'll walk you through the process. And so, Maureen, I'm going to flip it over to you from the perspective of an entrepreneur who's running a startup, who's going to be an issuer. They want to say, hey, I want people from Dubai to be able to invest in my hypothetical dope coffee business. How would that work out from the American perspective?
So any entity that wants to raise money on a regulated crowdfunding platform has to be a US registered entity. So they can be a company that's already registered and operating in Dubai or the UAE, but want to raise money in the US, so they have to come here and register. And I think you said earlier that company was registered in Delaware anyway, so that works. And then once that is done, then we talked about the Form C that you have to submit to the SEC, letting them know that I want to raise this amount of money. This is the amount of money this is what I want to raise the funds for. There's a plan associated with the money. Then you have to also list your directors and all the people that are on your team that have, significant ownership interest in the business. And then you have to apply to a platform. So what may not be known is that just because that platform is registered with the SEC and you want to raise money on it does not mean that the platform has to take you on as an issuer. They have an application process, and they are supposed to be objective, right? So everyone goes through the same application process. They don't choose based on which ones, or they're not supposed to choose based on which ones, they think will actually reach the crowdfunding goal. I've seen many campaigns on there that never make, the $10,000 threshold. That's like the minimum you can raise on most platforms. And then there are some who reach their goals, et cetera. So it's not necessarily about the funding, but mainly about your application process and the fact that, whether you're an LLC, a limited liability company, or if you're a corp or corporation, what documents you need to present to the crowdfunding portal so that they can make sure that you, whoever you are, have the authority to actually raise money on behalf of this company, et cetera.
I love it. I love it.
In terms of cost, I know that's what you're gonna.
Oh yeah, you read my mind. Go for
it. In terms of cost, so some platforms will charge certain fees based on what you want them to do for you. So some platforms say, we'll help you with the Form C, but you have to put down $5,000 for us, because that's the premium package, and we'll help you with the Form C and any other documentation, which may be helpful if maybe what you're trying to do is something straightforward. But I've also, when I was in private practice, I had clients who came to me after they worked with some of the big platforms, because, the states, they don't take into consideration the state crowdfunding rules too, as Samson mentioned. So even though you have a federal crowdfunding campaign going on, some states want you to notify them that you're raising money using Reg CF. So if you don't tell them that and they find out, then there's a fine associated with that, et cetera. So there's some risk there going with the platform. And they do have lawyers on their team and a compliance people on their team, but I think the issue is maybe there are just too many issuers or too many people trying to raise funds, and maybe they get behind or miss some things, which is why you want to work with someone who someone like Akshata, who this is what they do, right? So the other thing I will say about funds is that if the platform determines that you have to update your company records or something like that, then that costs, right? That it depends on the attorney's fees, but those might be fees you might not be expecting. So even if you put aside, let's say $25,000 to get this off the ground, you want to try to leave a little room for unexpected expenses.
Okay, so Maureen gave you a lot of great legal words, and I'm just going to tell you up front, it's going to cost you between $16,000 and $300,000 to raise up to $5 million underneath the new regulations. I know you're shocked. Everyone gets shocked by the sticker price. I'm just going to sum it up. There's no such thing as free money. So just keep that in mind. Particularly, no one's going to give you their hard-earned money for free. You got to tell your story. You got to have your docs in place. So it does cost between $16,000 and $300,000 to approximately to raise up to $5 million in America underneath the new Reg CF rule. So we're going to wrap it up here today. But first, Akshata, tell the audience how they can get into contact with you if they're looking to raise money there in Dubai, MENA, and also tell them any other countries you might service.
Right, sure. So if anyone wants to get in touch with us, you can visit us on karmadv.com. It's KARMADV.com. Or you can write to us at admin@karmadv.com. Or I'm just, I'm always on LinkedIn, so you can just ping any of us on LinkedIn. Other than that, it's not really possible to sort of, transcend boundaries and go on to the other jurisdictions just basis a Dubai or a UAE license. But what it does, and what definitely UAE is known for, is that UAE is pretty much your gateway to the Middle Eastern market. It's a very, it's a very close-knit market like that, and it's multicultural. So you end up meeting, people, and you end up meeting investors, you end up meeting SMEs across the region if you are basing yourselves in UAE. So from that perspective, it makes a lot of business sense to at least have one leg in UAE in some way or the other.
Excellent, excellent. And Maureen, where can folks find you at?
Sure. I'm at Crowdie Advisors on Instagram, what's the other one? Twitter and Facebook, and then Maureen Murat on LinkedIn. And the website is www.crowdieadvisors.com.
Excellent, excellent. So just remember, underneath the new Reg CF rules coming out in America, you'll be able to raise up to $5 million from retail investors. Anyone can invest, even if they're from Dubai. They just have to be at least 18 years old, and of course, go through the anti-money laundering, know your customer checks or AML KYC checks. It's going to cost you between approximately $16,000 to $300,000 to pursue your raise. So save some money so you can go raise some money. You must use a FINRA approved platform. If you're in Dubai, it's a DIFC, ADM, SCOM approval process. Again, Akshata can walk you through those details. In your fundraising timeline, we will touch about this on another conversation, is 3 to 12 months. Here in America, you have 12 months to raise your funds. So that's it for the moment.
Is there a time limit for you in Dubai? Sorry, Akshata, is there a time limit in Dubai?
Not really. Not that I'm aware of, but yeah.
In Dubai, they fund things.
One has to report, of course, for what time frame the fund is going to remain open. But it's from my understanding, it's 3 to 6 months, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was just interested in knowing that. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Again, reach out to both Maureen or Akshata, depending on where you're based and what your needs are. Till then, stay beautiful, stay safe, cover your cough. Hopefully everyone gets vaccinated soon enough, and we will see you all in the next orbit. Bye-bye.
Bye.